everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you. And following its recent 20th anniversary release within cinemas, we'll take a look back at Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith and ask the question as to whether it still carries any resonance today. And from that anniversary, we look at the original release date of May the 19th, 2005, where, as we all know, this was the third concluding part of the Star Wars prequel trilogy, which essentially was the origin story of the franchise's most iconic character in Darth Vader. It had all of the actors coming back from the previous two installments, from the likes of Hayden Christensen as Anakin, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, Natalie Portman as Padme, Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu, and Sir Iain McDiarmind as Chancellor Palpatine. Iconic creator George Lucas would return for directing duties once more. Now, in terms of the story, we followed the fallout of the Clone Wars, where Jedi Knights Anakin and Obi-Wan are assigned to rescue Chancellor Palpatine from the capture of General Grievous. After that event, we followed the final character arc of Anakin, as he falls into disagreement with the Jedi Council, who deny his ascension to Master Jedi. Anakin starts to experience visions of his wife Padme's death, and he seeks help from Chancellor Palpatine to see how he can prevent it from happening. However, this alliance uncovers darker forces within Anakin himself, which then has greater implications on the Empire and the Jedi Order. All of this leads to Anakin turning ever furthermore to the darker side of the Force. So nearly 20 years on after its original release, we look back at Revenge of the Sith. In terms of the much maligned prequel trilogy at the time, and yes, we can still say that it's easily the best installment. And to be honest, this was to be expected. After the ponderous elements of taxation and midichlorians from The Phantom Menace, the love story of Anakin and Padme from Attack of the Clones, Episode 3 contained the most compelling parts of this origin story. This time around we had much more significant events, from seeing the cause of Anakin's turn to the dark side, the elimination of the Jedi Order, the beginning of the Galactic Empire and the emergence of Darth Sidious, and of course Anakin's final transformation into Darth Vader. So unlike the previous two installments, this time around we had much more momentum and impact and purpose of the story. So much more to the point where I still believe that you could easily ignore episodes 1 and 2 and just go ahead with episode 3. I'll still also maintain that the prequel trilogy could have just been one 3-hour epic film, with 10% from episode 1, 15% from episode 2, and then the rest remaining for episode 3. And this time around we get plenty of standout sequences and moments. The opening space battle above Coruscant is visually epic, though deflated somewhat, where we have moments of droids attacking Anakin's spaceship, but overall this is still highly epic in scope and it really sets the tone for the rest of the film. We then have what I possibly feel is the best scene of the entire film, where Palpatine meets Anakin at the space opera, telling him the origin of Darth Plagueis. And I absolutely love the music that plays in this background, really giving that sense of dread and a haunting, sinister theme. And it's delivered so well by Iain McDiarmind here, whose performance is easily the best of the entire movie. I love the more smaller scene that we have between Anakin and Padme, when we see them overlooking on the balcony the skyline of Coruscant, really signifying the overall separation between the two figures here, very well put together. Of course, we have the famous Order 66 sequence, showing the elimination of the Jedi, again a great visual montage, well put together alongside the brilliant music once more from John Williams. The climatic duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin is suitably built up and carries plenty of spectacle. The flashy, over-stylized fight choreography may be overdone at times, but is still overall an epic encounter. And of course, the transformation sequence from Anakin to Vader is still chilling, though once more is undone by Vader's final crying out at the end. And it's moments like those that make this overall a flawed installment. George Lucas's direction and handling of the dialogue can be very stiff and clunky at times. The overall line delivery is just too telegraphed, more like the characters are just reading off auto cue rather than showing any true emotion. There is a certain lack of charm and charisma amongst the cast, but again this is much more a fault of the overall direction. And it's here where we look at Hayden Christensen's lead performance. Now yes, over the years many Star Wars fans have come to celebrate much more his role within the trilogy, And he certainly has, in terms of perception, overcome the large criticism that he faced when these films were originally released. But despite that, you still can't ignore the fact that he just doesn't carry the conviction or dramatic range for a part such as this. And this connects with perhaps the biggest issue of the entire film, which is Anakin's sudden turning to the dark side. Now, on the one hand, both of his manipulation by Palpatine and disagreement with the Jedi are established and developed very well. The motivation to save Padme is a sound one, and normally would justify Anakin siding with Palpatine against all reason if he feels that he's the only way to save Padme. But it's the sudden shift in terms of killing younglings and battling Obi-Wan at the end, his trusted friend, which I felt at watching for the first time was too sudden a shift, and having watched the film recently, I still feel the same even now. But despite all of its flaws, it was still a sound and resolute conclusion to the overall prequel trilogy. And for all of its flaws, I think if you're a fan, you could be overall satisfied with how this phase of the Star Wars universe was brought to the end. And being the final conclusion of the trilogy, Episode 3 was indeed a massive blockbuster success, grossing over $850 million worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing installment of the trilogy and also the second highest grossing film of the entire year. And 20 years on, many fans still deem it to be the best of the prequels, which I also agree with, but it's also true that it comes nowhere near to matching the original trilogies in terms of both the quality and cultural impact. As I mentioned before, people may have forgotten about this, but at the time, the prequel trilogy was very much maligned, again due to the stiffness of the overall characters, and much of the story arc feeling inessential and just ponderous. And yes, because it is indeed the origin of Darth Vader, who for me is quite possibly the greatest ever cinematic villain of all time, Revenge of the Sith will always carry some sort of reference, and we've certainly seen that in the following Star Wars content since its release, most notably with the CGI Star Wars Clone Wars series, which charted Anakin in his younger days, and that made various reference, especially towards the end of the show, in terms of Anakin's overall destiny and his turn to the dark side. We've also seen this referred to many times within the Star Wars Rebels show and also most recently with the Disney Plus Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So in that regard, we could say that Revenge of the Sith does carry some sort of lasting legacy. Though to be honest, it's much more about the origin story of Darth Vader rather than the quality of the movie itself, which I still feel today is overall competent and compelling at times, but still very flawed and nowhere near the high marks that were reached within the original trilogy overall. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings from reflecting back on Revenge of the Sith nearly 20 years after its original release. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other further movies, television series, or any other topics of the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know within the comments and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and I will see you very, very soon.